Okay, I'm Tom Shell, James Thomas Shell with the Hickory Hound, and I've chosen to create this chat session that I've created with Matthew Maulding. We've been speaking about it, doing this for probably a couple of months now, and we finally had the time to get around to it. Matthew ran for the Ward 5 seat of the Hickory City Council during the last election term, and he lost, but he put up a good showing, and he wants to continue along in his participation in the public forum, and this is his method in doing so. And basically I'm going to let Matthew tell you about what his purpose is in doing all of this. So Matthew, I'm going to let you tell us right now about your feelings about doing this this recording. We're going to put it up on YouTube eventually. We may go to doing a podcast eventually, but Matthew, just give us some words about what your purpose is here.
All right. Well, thanks, Tom. I'm Matthew Maulding. I think the idea of this is a great idea, to be able to have something that's focused here in Hickory that projects different opinions about our local government and the way that they do things. Both good and bad is a great idea to be able to bring to the people of this area. A lot of people don't realize out there that how much local government affects their day-to-day lives. A lot of the times they get very into the federal policies and stuff, which when it comes to the day-to-day things, they don't. It doesn't take as much of a. It doesn't matter that much. So, I think it's just a great idea to be able to bring this to people and let them hear different opinions about the government that helps us out and doesn't help us out in certain aspects here locally. So I appreciate Tom taking the time to do this and getting some issues brought up here.
Well, Matthew, let's get into it. And what is the initial subject that you're wanting to bring forward and discuss with the public?
Okay, well, the first thing I wanted to talk about that I thought was very important was the non-transparency of our local government. When I first got involved, I thought being nonpartisan elections and being that it was such a small scale compared to federal, that there would be a lot more transparency. There would be a lot more willingness to put information out there from the city side. So when we talk about the non-transparency of a local government, I think of just recently, I think it was it was the first January 2nd meeting of City Council where they had purchased, they had voted to purchase 21 acres of property that was outside of the city limits for the purpose of adding to our already stout parks system. And what I didn't realize at the time, because I wrote a letter to the editor about it, and I talked to all the city councilmen and city councilwomen, the mayor, and I brought it up to the city manager, and about how I didn't think this was a great way to spend over $250,000, given that we're already spending $40+ million of this bond money on our park system. So I didn't think it was a great way to do it. But what I was enlightened to from Alderwoman Joe Patton was that they had been discussing this purchase for 2 years behind closed doors, and it was presented to city councilmen, it was presented to the city council to vote on. And at that time, that was the first time it had come up, as far as I'm aware of, publicly. And then at that point, they had a unanimous vote for it, which gives us, the constituents about, basically hop on board, because at this point, there's no turning votes. There's no, they've obviously been talking about it for 2 years, and they're deciding to go through with it. So you get 2 to 3 weeks to catch up on it, jump on board, and just be okay with it, which to me is not right.
Well, I mean, that goes in, that is in line with one of the issues that I've had with the community. I mean, I believe in investment. I believe that if you don't invest in your community, then no investment means no growth. We absolutely have to have investment in the community. But there's good and there's bad investment in the community, and we have to target things and that really are important to our community, and we can't just do the helicopter drop of money and hope that things work out, because I think that's what I've seen with these bond projects. I think that $40 million, and $15 million of it was supposed to be for that part, the part that is out on Startown Road, and they've turned that into $5 million for that. But to make a long story short, let's get into talking about the overall $40 million. What has happened is that $40 million is a lot of money. It means that we're going to have to raise taxes here in the community, but it is not enough money to be a game changer in this day and age and to completely change what Hickory is about and what Hickory looks like. $40 million is not, we're not going to all of a sudden have a different Hickory because of $40 million. And what I believe that we needed to do is create an infrastructure investment fund, stick a few $1 million in it a year, and from that, then that buys us time to decide what we're going to do. We decided what we were going to do, and then we went about having a bond referendum to get the okay from the public to go access that money. And they said, do it now, do it now. It's important that we do it now. We're well over 3 years down the road, and we still haven't gone after a penny of that money. What was the urgency? What was the urgency in going after that money if we didn't have our ducks in a row? But because we're going after this $40 million, it's essentially taking the oxygen out of the room, and it's the only thing that is standing over the top of the council, and it is essentially, we can't do any other projects because we have this $40 million in our future that we've decided that we're going to do the city walk and we're going to do the river walk, and that's what we're going to do. Well, okay, if another great idea came up, where's that money going to come from? Okay, so if we would have had an infrastructure investment fund, and we would have stuck a couple $1 million away over the last 5 years, then we would have $10 million in that fund, and then we could choose a priority project and focus on doing that right. And from there, if we do that right, then success will breed success, and we can do more. Okay, they're going to have to raise, because of the $40 million bond project, they're going to have to raise property taxes to pay this money back. Do you think they'll lower that rate back down after they, take care of this? And if and when they get these projects paid for, do you actually think that they'll lower your property rate tax back down? I can foresee a scenario where they keep these bond projects on the books and keep rolling them over, because a lot of times that's what you do with debt. And there is a timeline on taking on this debt. Where is the timeline on paying it off?
Right. I to your points there, I agree, and to a lot of your points on that, but I do disagree with one thing. I fully believe that an infrastructure fund would be something that that should be well supported here. As of right now, I think as far as our budget for this fiscal year, we've got a transportation fund that everything as far as installation of traffic signal equipment, roadside litter contract, right-of-way mowing, street resurfacing, all of that. But our total for that is around $2.6 million, which, when you look at the big scheme of things, comes up short. And I think it shows in our infrastructure around town. But I think it's too far. We've gone too far with the bond project to turn our backs to it. Now, I think one thing we need to make sure that I believe we're both hitting strong points on here is the need. Right now there's no clear way of how long and how much we're going to be paying back to these. And I would hate to see the city of Hickory go down this road where you're saying we could just continue to be paying this extra tax and not have an end in sight. So I think to put it plainly, we need strong transparency in that realm to make sure that that we do have a strong way to pay this back and to get out of this as well. But I think when you look at the history of the city of Hickory and you consider the purchase that was just made outside of City of Hickory by the council and their staff, it shows that transparency is not something that's high on their list. And you have to, and if you want to get involved, if you want to know this stuff that goes on in the city, you have to devote a lot of time to it. You have to almost go out and have meetings set up with all of the city councilmen, because you have to remember the city council representatives are at large voted in. So, if you have an issue with them, you have every right to go and speak with each and every one of the representatives, even if it's not your ward. But they do make it extremely difficult in the fact that you basically have to set up these meetings with them, maybe monthly if you want to keep up with it. You have to bring questions to them, and you have to hope that you don't, quote unquote, rub them the wrong way, because then if that's the case, you're going to get shut out, and you're not going to get involved with as much involvement as you'd like. So, they do make it extremely hard to be involved fully.
And it's not them as individuals that are making it hard, it's the system itself. So it's not you're personally blaming individual, the mayor or the alder persons for what is going on. It's that's the way that the system is set up. I know that they created a transparency website, and I mean, it's completely gone off the radar. And I mean, if you're going to be accountable, if you're going to create something, guess who paid for that accountability website? The people who pay taxes in Hickory paid for that website. So if you don't use it,
you're right, because I don't want to put the blame on any individual. I have, while I've been involved here, I've communicated with Hank since he's been elected, and I'll tell you, I give it to the guy. He is on top of it as far as getting back to me, answering any questions that I've got, willingness to meet up with me. So you're right, it's not any certain individual, it is the system, which I think highlights the changes that are going to be that are needed around town here.
Yes, we need recommendations on what we can do to change the system. The people who are benefiting from the status quo are not going to change the status quo. That's just the experience of my life that tells me that. Okay, so I think we've fleshed that issue out to a certain degree. I mean, we're not going to rebuild Rome in a day. But
Okay.
but I would like to move on to your second item that you wanted to speak to, and that would be about. When does our local government give us the chance to learn of and question the decisions they make?
Yeah. Well, that's right along with what I'm saying with having to devote your own energy and time. And when I say time, I mean, a good bit of time. I have one day off throughout the week, and it's hard for me. We got six city councilmen and a mayor, and you have to throw in Warren Wood too. By reaching out to each of them and looking to try to meet with them at least once a month, you're looking at a fully scheduled day off, from your regular job. And as a citizen, it's just not conducive. We need to be able to make it a little bit easier for folks to get the information you want, without having to physically meet with everybody regularly.
Well, that falls in line with why I haven't been doing the newsletters to the Hickory Hound any longer, because people don't realize that I was spending sometimes upwards of 6 or 8 hours to do each individual newsletter. Honestly, I was. And I wasn't getting enough feedback to make that worth it. I mean, the people that read that were devoted to it, and I really do appreciate them being devoted to it. And I've heard that a lot of people miss that. But I have a life to live myself, and for selfish reasons, I had to choose to decide what would be a more effective way to participate in the local government and to communicate with the local government, and those newsletters just weren't it. And it was also that, some of it I was just repeating myself. And what I said, I pretty much said what needs to be said about the system that we're talking about. And I mean, yes, things evolve, but the message just doesn't need to be repeated constantly. We need to move forward with action, and that's what I'm trying to do. And that doesn't mean that I've disappeared from the scene or anything. As far as along the lines of this and the relationship with the Hickory City government, what I call Hickory Inc., because it is. If you look at it, city governments are incorporated by the state of North Carolina. They are a corporation. And who do those representatives represent? Do you really think they represent the people, or do they represent the corporation? I think they represent the corporation. And I think they look out for the interests of not individual people. They're looking out for the interests of the corporation. And they are investors in that corporation. Whereas we're just customers of that corporation.
Yeah, well put.
Well, we're supposed to be the owners the way the system is set up. We're supposed to be the stockholders in that corporation. We're not supposed to be treated like we're customers. Do you want to be a customer, or do you want to be a shareholder? Just because you don't...
If you look at what you want to be, or what you're... everybody that lives in the city pays the city taxes. So... if you're not going to stand up for how your tax money is spent, who do you expect to do that for you? You have to be able to get involved. And yeah, I mean, Hickory, as far as Hickory Inc., it is exactly that. It is a corporation. It brings money in and it spends money. And the only way you're going to to be able to advocate for how you think it needs to be spent is to get out there and advocate. I just wish it was a little more transparent, a little bit easier.
Who do you think that they're going to represent more? Your average individual out here who lives in the city of Hickory and works in the city of Hickory, or a big business owner that might not even enter the city of Hickory?
Yep. No, you're right. I mean, it's all about who you know. I can't remember the way it was put to me when I was running, and but it's about who you know and how much they're willing to share with you. And when you've got an inclusive group like that, it sure does take the. It almost, I want to put it, and you might agree with me. It's almost like it takes the fight out of the dog. You know,
it's frustrating.
Brings people and says, "Look, you know, you've got this is the way it is. There is no option."
Well, I mean, as far as I've heard it said a million times before about the ward voting system, and that the way it stands now is that you can go to any city council member, and you can be from let's say that you're from Ward 1, you can go to any council member from Ward 1 to Ward 6 and be heard, and they represent everybody in the community. And I don't think that that's necessarily true, because I know people that own businesses here in Hickory, okay, and they have a lot more influence over those city council members than somebody who lives in Hickory or works in Hickory. But one thing that I would talk about, I mean, I believe that there is a disconnect in understanding of the representation, whether it be with the people that work at City Hall in the Whitener building or city council members. And it's nothing personal. Maybe this will get them to thinking, but you know, if they end up hearing this. But one of the issues that I'll be getting at in my next Fox and Hound article is about the disconnect with the marketplace in the community and in our region. The young people say there is nothing to do around here. The older people say there is plenty to do around here. Well, maybe they're both right. That's one thing Carmen Eckert of the Foothills Digest, that's the publication that the Fox and Hound article is in. She said she hopes to convey that there is a lot of things to do in our community. We look at the various options of activities. There's plenty of golf. There are plenty of bars and drinking establishments. There are plenty of parks, and you can go to the library. I mean, you can go to the symphony. That's one thing that's touted a lot of times. Everything that's associated with the salt block and how that salt block, and I think our salt block is top notch for a community of our size. I would never say that it's not. It's an important part of our community. You know, there are a lot of organizations that you can join in our community to feel a part of something. But here are a couple of questions. Are these activities user-friendly? And are they what the people want? Are we meeting the needs of the marketplace? Because from all indications, the younger people don't feel like they are. What are your feelings about that, Matt?
Well, absolutely there is a disconnect. You know, I think one thing that is that needs to be highlighted is the way that I've noticed information is presented to the council, you know, and to city management. You have information that is is put out there in a very positive way with some little bits of information that really need to be highlighted. You know, it's great to pat yourself on the back for the good things you're doing, but as a city and as like you say, as a corporation, you always want to get better. You get better, and it's only going to be positive for growth and for the citizens. So, you know, I think we take a little bit too much time patting ourselves on the back for the good things we've done, and not quite enough time at pointing at the negatives, even if they're small, even if they, you know, I'm sure if one of the council representatives did listen to this, they would say, well, these guys are out of their minds, because Hickory was just voted like number 9 hipster towns in the nation or something like that. But you're still, they're still missing the little pieces of negative, like what you were saying about having groups of things. We have lots of bars and cellars and breweries. We have lots of parks. You know, those are lots of groups of things. But when it comes to diversity of those things, it doesn't pan out. You don't get too much of a diverse out there. And I agree with you 100%. The salt block is awesome. They are probably one of the best assets we have in the city that does bring diverse things to do for the people that we want to bring in. But you know, they can't do it alone. And I feel like if we look at that as the investment that we've made and the positivity that salt block has made, it only, to me, it just screams, well, you know, let's do more. Let's do more.
Well, let me ask you this: how do you improve a community? Do you improve a community by touting strengths, or assessing weaknesses and working on them?
In my opinion, we are only as strong as our weakest link, and I think it is the part of the community or city government to strengthen our weaknesses. That is why they are there. They are here to build a better community for the people that live here. So, you know, I look at that as we're only as strong as our weakest link, and we need to focus and fix or work on the things that are negative. Okay, now when you're talking about marketing for our city, you know, that's a whole other thing. Of course, you know, your marketing's got to be positive, and as long as you have, as long as you're working on those smaller or other negative aspects of our place, it's just going to help with the marketing and help push out there what we are and who we are and what we're really like here in Hickory. I think also we looked at Alan Jackson had presented to City Council a couple weeks ago on behalf of the what was it? The United
Art Council.
Yeah, United Arts Council with an economic impact study, and a lot of those things that he had mentioned were great positive things. I think it was something like almost $50 million of money generation through the city, which is huge. You know, you had just said at the beginning of our conversation how $40 million is a lot of money for the bond project. Well, that's a lot of money for having an arts economy here. But again, let's look at the negatives. Let's look at things we can do better. And I think one of the things that could have done better was you saw the comparison of the young people that were brought here either from outside of the county or from in the county in general. And one of the highlights that Mr. Jackson made was that we are bringing a lot more younger people from outside of the county to Hickory than we are, the people that live here themselves coming to our event. But I just don't feel. I feel like when you look at the whole scheme of things, you look at the actual number of young people coming to these events compared to the older generations, you can see the disconnect. You can see a lot more older people, whether it's, I think the age range was like 25 plus or something like that, maybe 30, ages 30 up, came here on almost double scale than the young people. So while, we have a positive of we're bringing young people in from out of the area, we still have the disconnect of we're still lacking bringing young people in.
It's about the perception of what we have to offer.
Yeah. I mean, one of the other things he had highlighted was that the average person spent almost $50 per time that they would go to an event. That means babysitters. That means
eating,
everything associated with doing an event. And to me, as a young person, now I love orchestras, and I love the arts. But do I see other people of my peers going out and spending $50 on a night to go to an orchestra? I just don't see that.
Well, I felt like the question of that evening was asked by David Williams when he asked whether they dug down to see the effect of this investment upon the minority communities. And essentially, Mr. Jackson told him that no, that they hadn't looked into that aspect of it, even though he felt like it was important and they should in the future, that they hadn't when they did this study. I don't think that they really, I think that they did this study with the idea of looking at all positives and not getting in there and trying to assess the marketplace.
Yeah. No, he definitely, and that's the beauty of having a diverse council. Is that was that voice that was there asking Mr. Jackson that question that wouldn't have been there had there not been, turnover in the council.
Well, that's a good lead into this subject right here. When I started attending the city council meetings in 2008, you had Ward 1 Representative Brad Lell, Ward 2 had Bruce Meisner, Ward 3 had Danny Seaver, Ward 4 had Zian Hoyle, Ward 5 had Sally Fox, and Ward 6 had Jill Patton, and then there was Mayor Wright, who was in his second term at that time. One of the issues we talked about there was a lack of turnover. This was during the ward referendum. We talked about that there was a lack of turnover of the council and its representation. Well, that was back in 2012. Well, subsequently, we've had Hank move over to the mayor's chair, and as an offshoot, that's the first time that I can recollect that happening. And I go back to looking at these mayor races. We've only had Hank's the fifth mayor we've had since the 1950s, which is amazing in and of itself. Because we keep them for a generation. But Brad and Danny and Jill are still there. But we've seen a lot of change over the last few years. Unfortunately, Vernon Tarleton, who had taken over from Bruce Meisner a couple of years ago, well, he passed away last week. And he was somebody that I would say brought people together during his short tenure on the council. He's certainly going to be missed. He was a voice of reason. But Now we're probably going to get an interim council person for Vernon. And then we're going to have a special election because we still got 2 years to go until the next election cycle. And then in a little over 2 years, well, we're going to have an election again. And it's highly, I mean, it's going to be up to Danny, but Danny Seaver, and he had a health scare a month ago, and I mean he may not run again. So we're going to get we could possibly get another council person. We've had a lot of changeover over the last couple of years. David Williams of Ward 5, and that's Hank's old ward. He fills 2 roles. He's around 40 years old, and he's the lone minority member of council. So he's going to be the voice of the younger generations and also the minority members. That's a plateful for David.
Yeah.
But through attrition, we're seeing some change. I still think the powers that be behind the scenes in our community are trying to control the change. As a guy who ran as a millennial, tell me about your perceptions of the council and Hickory's leadership and direction. What do you see for the representation of the council and the future?
Well, first off, I want to hit where you ended up there with David Williams. I know David personally. He's a great guy. I think he understands the load that's on his shoulders with both of those aspects of his being the representation of those two groups. At the same time, I don't think I can't think of anybody, and I don't know. I don't know everybody in Hickory, but I can't think of anybody that could take that better. David's a great guy, and I have a lot of hope, and I wish him the best of luck with what he's doing. As far as the turnover of council and how important that is, I think locally more than any, it's important because if you as a city get stagnant in your thinking, you're not gonna keep up with the times, and you're gonna do what's going to end up happening is really what happened here, and we lose a generation because of it. And I think that's the byproduct of not having much turnover as a council. I think one way that we can change this and help this not happen to our city again in the future is term limits. Now, I'm not thinking anything crazy. I'm thinking we had a limit of 2 consecutive terms, and you would have to sit the next one out. And then if you decided you wanted to go back for another 2 terms, you could. But I feel like by limiting each candidate and each councilman to 2-year or 2 consecutive terms, I think that keeps things fresh. It keeps people engaged, and it keeps people realizing that there's a chance for them. As an outside candidate, and I look at myself as an outside candidate because I didn't know too many people when I had started. Well, let me put it this way: I thought I knew a lot of people, but I didn't know the right people. And now that I've been involved with it, I see that, and I just think that it's. To be honest with you, I forgot what I was getting at there. But to look at it from coming in from the outside, it's pretty daunting. And if you put term limits on it, it increases the amount of heartbeat that the local politics have, which is what we need to keep going to keep ourselves from getting stagnant again.
That was what I was going to add right there. Is that I mean, we have a lot, or in the past we've had some stagnation, and that lack of change. We talk about not making an investment means no growth. Well, that stagnation also leads to a lack of growth, the lack of fresh ideas, protecting territories.
Yeah, I mean exactly. And do you feel if we had a term limit like that, where you had 2 year or no more than 2 consecutive terms, then you can go back again later, but you had to sit the third one out. Do you feel like that would stop that from happening again in the future?
I think 3/4 of the people in this community would be in favor of that. Now, by the time that they go out here and start demonizing individual people for matters that have nothing to do with nothing, I don't know what those numbers would be at that point in time. But if the issue's allowed to stand on its own merits, I don't see how it wouldn't pass, especially with all that's gone on with government over time. I'm not saying Hickory government personally. I'm saying government top to bottom.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that, and this keeps going along the same lines, is that when you look, I was reading something where it was some polling that had been done to show what the older generations see as diversity and what the millennials see as diversity. And there's actually a very big difference of opinion there. To somebody like me and my peers, we look at diversity as being bringing a diverse background, regardless of race or ethnicity or gender, just a different background. And when you ask older generations, you look at they look at the colors of the skin, they look at the ethnicity, they look at gender.
Well, that's because that's what the news media pushes, and people.
Yeah, oh yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, but I mean, I think having when you look at wanting to bring young millennials in, they want inclusiveness. They want to feel welcome. They want to feel like it's like they're not going to be a burden. Well, if we want our economy and everything else around it to succeed in the future, we've got to get millennials involved now. They have to be, regardless of what your generation or what your personal beliefs are against millennials, whether it be good or bad. We need to get them involved, because they're going to be the ones taking over whenever this older generation moves out. And if they're not involved and they don't have a good base, a good background in it, it could be not good. So I think inclusiveness would go to help us in so many more other ways than we can really even think.
I think that's something that was part of the mindset in the past that we've, as a culture, have lost our way on, is mentoring people and raising them up to take over, so that we've lost the mindset of leaving a legacy and leaving our property, community, whatever it is, in a better position than we found it. I mean, we used to do that with families. I mean, if you have kids or whatever, I know you have kids, don't you want your kids to be better off than yourself?
Absolutely.
Right. And I think that we've lost our way in that. And as far as a community goes, I mean, we should want our community to be better off than it was when the way that we found it. And I don't know that you could say that about our community over the last generation.
Yeah. Well,
I'm not saying that to point fingers at anybody. I'm saying that because it is nothing personal against anybody. I just think that people, because of economic conditions and economic realities and the survival instinct that we've had over the past generation, people are just, I got to pay my bills or whatever, and I got to worry about me, I got to worry about my immediate surroundings, and they've lost sight of the big picture. But the big picture affects you also.
Yep.
So you think we can wrap this one up?
Yeah, I think we covered some good ground here. We had some good topics. I think we hit a lot of things that need to be hit. If I could just throw I don't know if this is cool. If I could just throw a couple of last-minute things in here.
You go for it.
Then I'd be cool to wrap it up.
Okay.
The first thing I wanted to bring up was the way that the NCDOT and the city have tried to slip by these projects that are still happening, as far as 321 widening and a little bit of the 127 bridge widening. I'd like to, I would like to reach out to each city councilman individually and the mayor and the city manager. But I believe that we need to have a public meeting, maybe in a few different areas, about all of the projects going on that has city officials there and has NCDOT officials there, as far as the 321 project, the 127 project, and also if I'm not mistaken, the sinkhole that still has a lane down on 70. I think there's a lot of people out there in the public that have questions about this, want to get involved, want to know more, and I think it's on our city officials and NCDOT to bring forth one or two public meetings that can fill people in as needed. And also, I'd like to just throw in there, maybe have somebody with the Downtown Development Association willing to talk to people about downtown parking, because there's a lot of upset people about downtown parking. Now, I understand as part of the bond project, the contingency money, it's definitely a priority, but there's a lot of other people that see it needs to be higher up, or just have questions individually about it. So I want to urge anybody listening to this to also ask the representative of the Hickory City Council to hold public meetings.
Well, as far as that downtown parking situation, that perfectly meshes with what I've spoken and alluded to when it comes to the disconnect with the marketplace. Because if the people that own businesses down on Union Square are not happy and believe that you're going to disrupt their business by taking away parking, are they going to stay in business down there on Union Square? So you're biting off your nose in spite of your face. We don't, I talk about all the time what I have witnessed here in our area, and I call square peg and round hole engineering, where we take that square peg and we put it up to that round hole, and we take a sledgehammer and just bang the hell out of it, because it's going in there. And we need to, we got to start listening to people. And we got to start doing what the people want, instead of getting locked in on a mindset of, okay, we decided this is what we're going to do it, and we're going to do it by hook or by crook. That never works out. In my life, I'm 51 years old. I've never seen that square peg and round hole engineering work out well. Yeah.
Well, and the sheer fact that the the city of our size, of Hickory, North Carolina, has really, if you count the parking downtown, we've got these 4 big projects that's coming up. Not including any smaller ones, but just these 4 big ones that are sprouting up that cover a wide range of our city. I just think it's something that needs to be done, and I don't want to,
Well, I mean, but that was what I was alluding to on the bond projects, and we have basically taken on too much.
Yeah,
we got to pick out
if you
one
include
thing.
The bond project, which I know they hold separate meetings and whatnot, but if you include that, I mean, that's five big infrastructure projects happening around here that I'm sure lots and lots of people have lots of questions for our city officials.
See, I remember back right after the bond referendum and during the bond referendum process, it was spoken to by the mayor and the people on council that they only wanted positive people to be on that bond commission. And so what that has created as a chef and putting the ingredients in, there's some seasoning that you need to bring the best out of that recipe. Okay? And salt by itself and pepper by itself might not be great things to eat, but they certainly do enhance the other ingredients. So, and that salt and pepper is that guy that might question something, might even complain about something. But if you got such a great argument in doing something, then it's going to overcome what anybody might say that might be perceived as being negative.
Yeah. So I just wanted to bring that up, and then as an end, and then also I want to thank Hank for talking to me as much as he does and keeping me informed, and to David Zagaroli too, who's been really open to allowing me to stay involved. So and then thanks to you, Tom, for bringing this up and doing the podcast thing. I think it's important for the people in Hickory to know what's going on, even in a non-election year. And I really hope that this takes off, and people will start getting involved more, and we can help get this city back on its feet and grow.
Well, I appreciate the time, and down below you can leave the comments we're initially going to post this on YouTube, and we welcome all comments. Try not to just attack our character, because we're not really bad guys, so it's not worth coming after us in that manner. And we don't have the intentions on going after other people and attacking their character. We're just discussing the issues.
Yeah, and also I love learning things, especially about the city. So if there's something that I'm not aware of that I've said that you could fill me in on, please comment below and let me know, because I take constructive criticism very well, and I love learning from it. So if you've got an opinion, you live in Hickory and you've got an opinion about anything we've said, I encourage you to do like Tom said and leave a comment.
Okay, so we're going to wrap it up and get this posted, and we'll talk at you later.